You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, a series of calamities befall a couple awaiting the birth of their twins. Is it bad luck or is it something else? We'll review the podcast, The Unborn. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
Also with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of the Piper Green series of cozy mysteries, Laura Bricker. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Rebecca.
And finally, our resident Doubting Thomas, author of the City Trilogy of novels, host of Rip Current, Strange Arrivals, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast host, Toby Ball. Hi, Toby.
Hi, Rebecca.
So, Kevin, This is Thursday's program.
It is.
What's coming up on Monday's show?
Well, on Monday, you got to remember this season 1 was among a lot of our top 10 best TV for 2023. And now it's season 2, and it's Bad Sisters.
All right. And that's the one with Bono's daughter in it.
Just like The Perfect Couple.
Oh, yes, which was also on my top 10, by the way, of 2024. So, Toby,
Yeah.
it is late in the afternoon here in New Hampshire.
True.
I happen to notice that you are wearing pajamas. Are you feeling okay?
It's my podcasting outfit.
Oh, you have a podcasting outfit.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've got a sweatshirt on, so it's not like full on, but I do have the plaid pajama pants going. And slippers. I do have slippers on, too. Yeah.
Well, I feel a kindred spirit to you because on days that I'm going to be lazy, like on Christmas Day, I got up, took a shower, blow dried my hair, put on fresh pajamas, and spent the entire day in those. And then I also
Like Hugh Hefner.
I spent all of yesterday in some pajamas too. Did I not, Kevin?
You did.
Yeah.
So I joined you. Like, oh, pajamas. All right.
And we watched a lot of TV,
We did.
a lot of movies.
Yeah. Hard pants aren't required to podcast.
They
No, this
aren't.
is true.
They aren't
And as we've demonstrated, sometimes none at all.
hard pants.
Yeah.
I'm wearing hard pants. I actually went to my office for the first time in a long time today, so I'm feeling like back in the world.
Is that the post-pandemic nomenclature that hard pants?
Yes.
And
Soft pants.
And soft
Yeah.
pants.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I don't know what to call mine. I'm wearing jeans, but they're really big. So they're not like...
That's hard pants.
Is that hard pants?
That's hard. Yeah. Jeans are hard pants.
Even if it's like that funky.
You got to like buckle or zip or anything like that. That's hard.
It's hard. But what about you, Kevin? What are you wearing?
I'm wearing hard pants.
Yeah. You work at home, Kevin. You don't have to wear...
I don't ever wear
Soft
pants.
Yeah.
Really?
You got that pair of joggers and you really haven't been wearing them.
Oh, once or twice, but it's also like, well, you know. So I'm no Toby Ball. I can't pull this off.
Yeah. I get home from work and immediately put non-hard pants on if I go to the office. Like for some reason...
Non-hard pants?
Yeah, when I come in, I only go to the office like one day a week. And so I come home and the first thing I do is like, it's almost like I'm wearing something fancy. I'm not. I'm usually wearing jeans and a sweater. And I run into the bedroom and immediately I'm like, I need soft pants. Like for no reason. Why are they so much better?
It's the Mr. Rogers thing, man. You're at your place.
Yeah.
Got to change.
Neighborly day in the beauty wood.
The people I run into on a day-to-day basis when I'm doing podcasting stuff is they're mostly cats and then my wife. And so sometimes hard pants, sometimes soft pants.
Yeah.
Same thing.
I wore a little skirt to New Year's Eve and I thought Kevin was going to lose his mind. I was like, I do have legs, by the way. They do exist.
Oh.
Here
Yeah.
they are.
She looked great,
Wow.
by the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to try to throw a set of twins in her, but, you know.
Oh my.
Ew.
Just saying.
All right. Speaking of.
This is my transition into the podcast.
Nice job. Nice job getting us back on track. Should we talk about the thing?
Let's talk about the thing.
Let's just move on.
You want to go right to the review, Toby?
I don't even want to do that, to be honest. But
Let's get into it then. Leading off.
There was a huge cloud of black smoke that engulfed me. And as soon as I opened that door, I saw flames go up. Then I hear the window bust.
Jared Akron seems to be living the perfect life. A newlywed with a new house and twins on the way. But as the due date approached, that life started to unravel. Their home was destroyed in a fire. Then, kept from the delivery room by COVID protocols, his wife Christy texted that the babies were gravely ill.
So she goes, well, I'm going back into the room to get the gown. They do an ultrasound, is what she tells me. They can't find a heartbeat.
As he tried to put their lives back together, Jared realized he overlooked some red flags about the pregnancy and his social media-obsessed wife. Were the calamities around them caused by bad luck or by someone close to him?
I'm going to tell you a story that's all too real about love, lies, and the lengths people will go to for attention. It's a story that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about truth, about reality, and about what happens when the two collide in the most unimaginable way.
From iHeartMedia, Audio Up, and Just Sweep Press Productions comes the podcast, The Unborn. Host Trisha LaFache talks with Jared and his loved ones about his tale of illusion, deception, and psychosis. Spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about significant plot points from The Unborn. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. But honestly, I don't really think being spoiled is going to matter that much in this podcast. So Kevin, The Unborn. Can we just talk about what a fucking stupid name that is for this podcast?
Well, it certainly has implications of reproductive rights issues, and is
somebody unborn if they were never, like, is that even a thing? What is the unborn? What does it refer to?
All right, well, then let's skip far ahead in my notes here.
Let's talk about the cover.
The podcast cover. It has been a long time since we talked about a podcast cover.
I gotta look at
I think
this.
it was Broken Hearts.
You're talking about the art?
The art, yes, yeah.
I'm
So the
taking a
cover art, The Unborn, and there's like a subtitle here called Rockabye Baby.
Oh my God.
The Unborn. It looks like a Korean water ghost with a pregnant belly in a creepy forest.
Okay.
And it just underscores for me my long-held concern that true crime is positioned as supernatural horror, which is a disservice to the listeners and the industry as a whole. And so there's a lot about this where I'm like, people really thought this was a good idea. People really greenlit this. People think that this is what makes for good true crime content.
Oh my
and
God.
I'm like,
it looks like Regan from fucking The Exorcist.
it's like the woman from The Ring.
Yes.
Right?
It's really scary. Like, I saw it and I'm like, oh my God, is this going to be one of those cases where the lady like wants a baby and cuts a baby out of someone else, like a horror movie? That's what it summoned for me when I saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But a
Okay.
horror movie, and it's not a horror movie.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I would like to ask anyone else if they felt this way. So I guess I'll start with you, Toby. I listened to the first 5 minutes of the first episode, and then the whole rest of the episode was just like the first 5 minutes. And then I listened to the second episode, and it was just a repeat of the story from the first episode. Do you feel like this was a well-structured, well-edited podcast?
Yeah, no. I did have that thing where I would go and I'd be like, wait, have I listened to this episode already? And then it's like, no, I guess I haven't. So I guess I'll soldier on. Yeah, I mean, they start off by saying we're not professional podcasters, we're fans.
We're not journalists.
But they are, they are apparently script writers, amongst other things. And I get it, like you're a fan and you want to try and make a podcast. So you've got this story that you want to tell or whatever. But that doesn't absolve you from like trying to make it interesting and coherent. You can't just fucking throw whatever's out there. And I had a really hard time with this podcast, to be quite honest. Like, I kept thinking, like, what's going on? I hate to say, but why do I care about any of this stuff? Jared is like positioned as this like great guy and he'll do anything for anybody. And, he's always been a stand-up guy or whatever. And it's like, oh God, we're starting on this already. So anyway, after the first like 7 or 8 minutes, I just had that sinking feeling that this was not going to be an easy listen. And it turned out I was correct.
Yeah, I'm in the same position 5 minutes in because 3 things happen in the first 5 minutes.
What's that?
One, we get a 911 call, which I cannot tell whether this is a recreation or not.
I believe it is.
Right.
I strongly believe that it is. It is my opinion that it is.
Because if it is, like either way, they should be disclosing this.
911 response, what's your emergency?
I need a fire truck.
Sir, where are you located?
I'm at
Is anyone hurt? Are you hurt?
No, everybody's okay. Everybody's okay. I just need somebody to put the fire out. I need a fire truck over here right now.
Sir, I need you to give me all the details that you can calmly.
No, nobody's hurt. Nobody's hurt except for we need a fire department.
Then you get coming up on this season. In the first 3 minutes, this is what's happening this season. And it gives away virtually everything. There ends up being almost no suspense for the next couple of episodes because they've telegraphed what's going to happen. And then they come up with the disclaimer, like you said, about well, we're just fans. So if we mess up, bygones, let's play the disclaimer.
So if we fail to introduce a source or present proper evidence, sorry about that. All I can say is what you're about to hear is 100% true.
And additionally, Kevin, they say that they are not going to be using anyone's real name in the podcast.
Right. Well, they say that once, and so that kind of, it was on the second listen that I picked up on that. You're right. But this whole thing is, with this whole disclaimer, it's like, hey, I like to eat food. Welcome to my restaurant. If you get food poisoning, oh, well, not my fault. Right? It's like you need to step up a little more on this. And it's not just because they made this in their basement or whatever. I don't know if they did that. But there are a lot of other hands on this who should have known better.
Right. So, Laura, what this podcast essentially is Jared and a couple of other people in Jared's life telling Jared's side of the story. What do you think of the journalistic integrity of that kind of enterprise? Not that they're journalists, by the way.
Well, basically what this felt like to me was a platform for Jared to be like, gotcha, and tell everything that he wanted to tell about Christy and all the things that had happened. And then for Jared's friends and people in the town who had heard some scuttlebutt that was just unconfirmed rumors about things, to give them a platform. And I just felt like, okay, so every single episode is going to be somebody else telling something they heard about Christy or something that Christy did. There was no balance to the story. There was no other side to the story. There was no context, really. It was just like a retelling of, get a load of this crazy thing that happened with this woman that I was married to. And maybe I can use this in my divorce case now as evidence or something, I found it very, very frustrating. It felt very one-sided. And it felt like it was just sort of, there was no checks and balances here. It was just like, well, this is what he says. And we're just going to let him tell his story because you're not going to believe this wild story we heard.
Yes. And we're going to absolve ourselves by not using their real names.
Right.
The reason I keep bringing that up is because it's my opinion that is how they were able to potentially get this through a vetting process of some kind. Because this was an iHeart production, right? iHeart isn't stupid.
Yeah.
And we have here like a person who is accused of all these things, which, she may have done. Who cares? But it's like, Jared's perfect. Everyone in the community says Jared would do anything for anyone. Facebook briefly thought that Jared was in on the baby thing, but he wasn't. And it's like, Jared. I don't know. I found it to be quite unbalanced too. But then I also found myself thinking, does it matter? So, Toby, we listened to a podcast with a similar construction about a woman who was faking her cancer. And it was just like people talking about her, right? And that podcast was not a good podcast, but at least it had like an interesting, like, scammy thing in the middle of it, the beginning of it. This woman basically pretended to be pregnant with twins and used the COVID pandemic to try to like keep this lie up. Did you find that like a lot of questions about how she pulled this off were not answered in the podcast?
Yeah. Again, it's weird because they spend a lot of time talking about a very rare mental / physical condition in which people believe they are pregnant and actually show signs of being pregnant without actually being pregnant. And that goes on for quite a while. So there is this like, oh, well, maybe this is this crazy story about this woman who had this thing happen to her. But that all seemed to kind of go nowhere. Then she gets let out in handcuffs and is like going off. And then they're on some like bolo thing at the hospital. I mean, the whole thing is just like, where are we going with this?
It was like we were supposed to believe like that nothing like this has ever happened. And you're just not going to believe the next place this story goes. So they just kept telling it more and more. And it's so repetitive.
Yeah, there's actually repeated tape in here too.
She said right off the top, she said that this show will make you, meaning me, question everything I thought I knew about truth, about reality, and about what happens when the two collide in the most unimaginable way. And so it didn't have any effect on what I think is truth. It really didn't have any effect about what I think is reality. And the idea that truth and reality would somehow collide as though they're like two opposing forces. And when they meet, something weird happens. Like, I don't understand even how that works. And this was certainly not the most unimaginable way. So they make a lot of promises up front within the first 5 minutes before they remind us that they're not actually podcasters or journalists. I was just like, who fucking wrote this? Like, Why would you like lead in with this? Because it really doesn't have anything to do with any of that stuff at all. It's about a woman who's probably mentally ill, does this kind of kabuki theater about being pregnant.
Yeah.
The real interesting thing here, and I'll give him credit for this, is that I think the nut of the story is really interesting because you have this whole thing about is it false pregnancy? I'm going to say it wrong.
Pseudocyesis.
Pseudocyesis, okay? Which means they're not stuffing a pillow under their shirt. It's very much along the lines of Dan Taberski's Hysterical, right? We're like, what is the mind and body doing together? So I thought that was interesting. I'm glad they went into that, and I think it's the third episode. I don't know if we needed a full episode on that, right?
But we also didn't hear that she had that.
Yes, we did. Here's what you missed when you zoned out.
Okay.
And I think this is really important because I think this would have done an awful lot to improve this podcast, which is because, first of all, they telegraphed right from the beginning that there are no children, that she's faking the pregnancy. There's no getting around that.
Well, they were unborn.
They were unborn, right? But the whole thing about her being shady and shit like that, the audience immediately, that's what we're thinking. Was anybody surprised by the end of the second episode that there were no babies? Like, nobody was,
It was
right?
the first episode.
Wherever it was,
and
right?
the second episode.
And the second episode and all this stuff, right? So I'm more or less listening to this like, I wonder where she's getting the photos of the sick babies. I'm not thinking, those babies are sick. I'm always like, I wonder where she got those. This is obviously fake photos. How is she pulling this off? Blah, 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 blah. Okay. What we find out in the middle of the third episode is that she demonstrated the physical signs of pseudocyesis. So they talked to Jared. He says, yeah, she had the swollen belly. She had the tender breast. She had a lot of those signs.
Did she get a period?
Not that I know of.
Did she have breast tenderness or breast enlargement?
She complained about it probably the last 3 months.
How about abdominal enlargement?
It looked like a beach ball.
How about nausea?
It was terrible the first trimester. Run to the bathroom every 5 minutes.
It does make me kind of wonder, did she actually have that? Because, again, I'll just say, for 2.5 episodes, I'm assuming she's stuffing a pillow under her shirt and just pulling the eyes over everybody. If we, as listeners, believed, they're like, no, but she actually is pregnant. She's, it would have, again, created some suspense that you gave away in the first 3 minutes with the coming up on this season, right? This is why this is a fucking clusterfuck. But the head scratcher ends up being, right, this is the real mystery that is really interesting here, is that even though that happened, and we hear from other women that, like, it's rare, but when it does happen and it's brought to the would-be mother's attention, it sort of, like, breaks the fever, right? Like, the symptoms subside, the mind catches up with the body and whatnot. So at some point this happened with Christy, but her belly didn't go away, right? All this stuff didn't happen. But also, she is demonstrating a lot of sketchy behavior, premeditation, things to keep it going. So how do we square those two? That is really fascinating for me. I don't know.
I have a potential theory, and Laura, you can weigh in on this.
Okay.
We're getting Jared's take that she looked pregnant. Right?
Yeah.
So he may have said, how did I get fooled this long? Well, she did gain weight, she did whatever. Like, there's no objective anything in this saying that this is what's going on. It's all through this fucking lens of this dude. And this dude is also saying things like, my lawyer told me to get the fuck away from her. He's conveying the thoughts of people that they definitely, likely, in my opinion, wouldn't say in the jobs that they had.
Well, like that whole setup when he goes out to like set up the service of process and like his lawyer supposedly coaches him through this. I'm like, I don't know any lawyers that would ask one of their clients to do such a sketchy fucking thing to get somebody served.
Yeah.
I think I agree with what you're saying, Kevin, because I think for me, what I thought was interesting about this is they were saying like, well, yeah, there are these phantom pregnancies, but for her to be almost full term with a phantom pregnancy was very rare. So I'm like, number one, is that what was going on? I felt like this could have been really interesting. It was a mental health story. And I think that's the part that really pissed me off about this, is that this was clearly somebody that had significant mental health issues, if we're to believe what Jared said. But instead of recognizing that, everybody's just bashing her for having mental health challenges. And I'm like, what actually was really going on with her? Was she just gaining weight? Was she actually exhibiting all these symptoms? And then at one point they said, what was like the nurses and the hospital looked at the Facebook and she looked pregnant in the pictures and all this. I'm like, but
I have seen that photo. I have seen that photo as I was doing my research for this. I saw a black and white version of the pregnancy photo. And yeah, she looks 9.5 months pregnant in this photo. Now, we know that she bought sonograms and, fake pregnancy tests. Did they explore like whether or not she had a latex prank baby thing, like, because you can buy those, right? They didn't. I mean, I could see why, but like, what is going on with her? I don't know. No one's ever going to ask, like, what is going on with you just because you joined us on Patreon?
That's true.
Oh.
People are going to know. They're like, oh, yeah, you like really great exclusive content.
It's the business section.
Because we have over 700 episodes exclusive to you at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia. They include things like the Crime Writers on After Show, Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast, our advice podcast, Marry with Podcasts. The advice would be, don't fake your fucking pregnancy. You can also get Rebecca's updates on the Karen Reed case and the Readathon. Rebecca, we were supposed to go to retrial in January. It's January. Where's the retrial?
The judge has agreed to put it off a little bit.
Agreed to put it off a little bit.
But it has not stopped all of the fake-ass trolls pretending to be hundreds of people on Twitter putting out the quote evidence that Karen Reed definitely killed John. It's not stopping. They're ramping up.
Yes. If you join us at the Bricker scale level, you get an exclusive bonus podcast, and that's Laura Bricker's Leave It to Bricker podcast. Laura goes to a cat show. Now, this is like, what is the dog show they have every year?
The American Kennel Club?
Kennel Club, yeah. Westminster
Kennel Club, yeah.
Yes, yeah. It's like this, but for cats. And it's at the Fox Run Mall.
I don't think it was at Madison Square Garden, right?
No, and these cat show people, I found out they travel all over the place. And one of the things I didn't know, and I guess maybe I was naive, it's all about the cat sperm, people. They can charge more money for it if they go to the cat shows.
Yeah. Can you imagine your whole life being like driving around with fucking cats in your car? I used to have cats, and they are really hard to drive around with.
Well, that's so interesting because that's one of the questions I asked a man at the cat show is how he drove, because he was driving from Pennsylvania all over the country because he was on the international circuit.
Oh.
I was like, with his Siamese cats. I said, my cat like acts like it's dying on the way to the vet. And he's like, you're doing it wrong.
You're not giving them drugs, is what you mean.
You're not giving them drugs. I know that dogs can sometimes have false pregnancies. I don't know about cats. I don't know about cats, and we're not even going to ask how they get the cat sperm.
Okay.
Meow. Okay, so what if you join us at the Let's Do What We Do? Cats be fucking. If you join us at the Let's Do What We Do level, you can listen to episodes of Crime Writers on early and ad-free. And if you join us as a deep diver, you not only get all of that stuff, but you also can get early access to Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club. You can join the live recording. You can chat in the chat. And the last book Toby did was called A Threat of Violence, and it's 2025. And Toby, are you putting together your list for the books that you're going to be covering in 2025?
I am putting it together, but it is not yet done. But it should be coming out pretty soon.
Can you tease like one or two? Come on.
There'll be one or two books.
Yeah. Asshole.
No,
okay.
I don't have it all fucking
so he's
together.
putting it together, which means he's thinking about putting it together.
Yeah, he's putting it together, yes.
I've got some recommendations. I can't name them off the top of my head.
Okay, all right, fine.
We believe you.
Hey, another way you can support us
is the pseudocyesis of book club.
You're right. It's just, I can see him swelling up now.
Yeah, there's a book-shaped thing under my sweatshirt.
His books are lactating. We have an Amazon storefront where you can see some of our favorite things. Rebecca, what are this week's Amazon recommendations?
Well, I know I've recommended several car accessories, Kevin, and I've got one more because everyone wants to know what to buy for their car, right? Okay. I bought these amazing for my new car. I bought them for your old car too, but I bought a different kind for my new car. These hooks that you hook over your, the headrest little poles. So you hook them behind the headrest so that then when you have a purse or something, instead of throwing it on the floor of the car, you can hang it up. But you use yours to hang up all your umpire gear, like your shirts and shit when you're driving around.
I'm actually going to tell you, we're not using it right. That's a secondary use. It's marketed so you put the two of them so that you can hold a tablet in the back seat for a child. That's why there's two of them.
That's your kind.
Oh, that's my kind?
I bought the kind that's explicitly for hanging purses.
All right, that's great. That's great. Now, Toby, you also go in with your listener-inspired deep cut recommendations. What are you coming in with this week?
Well, Kevin, just because you said you liked it, this one starts off by saying that it is a romance novel in parentheses. And then the romance novel is apparently called Makin' Bacon.
Yeah.
The Homegrown Cafe Book Club 1.
Making bacon. Yeah.
Making bacon sounds awesome. And then we've also got the Dust Pro 71-inch by 11-inch moss table runner moss carpet for green moss, wall moss, table runner for table decoration, mossy mat peel, and stick moss, sheet moss R.
I love that.
A lot of moss.
A lot of moss.
No
going
moss.
on.
Love
No
it.
moss.
There's a character called Mossy on General Hospital, which is this giant bowl of moss balls on one of the characters' kitchen islands, and it's become such a cult like fan thing. It grows, it gets smaller, it gets bigger, it gets more elaborate. So I think that people who do the show like have picked up on the fact that everyone online calls it Mossy.
So they do like cutaways to the
of just
chia
the bowl.
pet. And,
Yes.
Great. Okay, wonderful. Well, if you want to check out all of the recommendations, you just go to Amazon.com/shop/Crime Writers On. Make it your New Year's resolution to
Bookmark that.
bookmark it. You can go and get a quick look and then do the rest of your shopping. We earn commissions on qualified purchases.
You can buy anything you want from Amazon as long as you use our
You
link.
can, and I have to tell you that some of my friends got things on their Christmas card list that were recommended by Toby Ball.
Really?
The actual card said recommended by Toby Ball, and I was waiting and waiting. It was the Rosewater Good Wipes.
Nice. All
People
right.
need to
I
be
don't know.
wiping.
They need some refreshing
So I guess
foot wipes.
Butts need a wiping.
All right, Kevin. Before we end our business section, I have a very important question for you. Mm-hmm. Do we have any randomly selected Patreon patron saints of the week this week?
Our Patreon patron saints are Jennifer Whitcomb and Lindsay Eberts. Bless you.
Lindsay, Jennifer, thank you so much for supporting us on Patreon. Thank you for everyone who does, by the way. We really, really appreciate you. We love making stuff for you back there. And thanks for everybody who listens to this business section anyway.
And a reminder, you can also purchase a Patreon membership as a gift. Yeah,
That's right.
people do.
You can buy someone a year-long membership to the Brichter Scale or both the Deep Divers or to the Let's Do What We Do level.
Mm-hmm.
That person could be getting early and ad-free episodes all year round. All right, Kevin. Does that send our business section?
This ends the business section.
I'm going to go ahead and fade that music out. So, Laura, you really love when podcasts have in-depth recreations and lots of sound effects, right? So you must have loved this show.
Well, I have to tell you, at one point, I think there was some sirens when I was listening to this, but they were really like light in the background. And I was like, something happening in my neighborhood. And I was like, no, it's the podcast. But then the part that I was like, I just couldn't even handle was the reading of the Facebook messages and posts in the alleged voices of the people that were involved. Oh, Rebecca, it's good to hear from you too. I really haven't seen you in a long time. The twins are growing big, Rebecca.
Christy responds,
I'm pregnant with twins, a boy and a girl. My due date is December 7th, but they won't let me go past November 21st. It's been a long time since seeing you.
I was like, what the fuck is that?
Why is fake Christy the only one with that accent?
Yeah, it was like there's a place where you're like, okay, it's creative that you're trying something different to like not just read things. But this was horrendous. It was bad.
Yeah.
I mean, not that it needed to be said, but it is in every other podcast. To notify and disclose that these are recreations. The 911 call, like, it really is still spinning in my head. I don't know about that. I guess we're supposed to realize that the audio tape of Christy leaving the hospital screaming for her babies is not actually Christy.
No?
Because
He wasn't running video on that at the time?
No.
Where were the children? Were they okay? But Christy was beside herself, screaming and crying, too emotional to answer.
Why are you arresting me? I didn't do anything. My babies, please, my babies.
But I will say that Wondery has lost its championship belt for the way too much sound design award.
Really?
Yeah, because there were sound effects for everything. I'm trying to figure out. I mean, you're like the sirens were softly in the background. I'm like, bullshit, Laura. They got pretty up close, and
I thought I was being chased.
yeah, you were being chased. All right. But here's the thing. Okay, I can't decide which one is more egregious. Whether it is the passage about champagne tastes and beer budgets.
She had champagne tastes, even though Jared had a beer wallet.
Where you hear the pop and then the crack of the beer. Or the passage where they talk about the woman who shot the farm animals and burnt down the house.
Shot and killed all the farm animals. Tried to burn her house down. Oh yeah, she's certifiable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
I was expecting when they talked about Christy growing up like in a rough...
Yeah.
I was expecting there to be like the sound of a kid screaming and like smacking noises. It was really bad.
Yeah, again, it goes back to that. I just don't know who thinks that this is the way to produce these things.
It's what true crime is supposed to sound like,
I
Kevin,
guess
isn't it?
so.
No.
It's the fucking Lone Ranger is what it is. But that is not the biggest sin of this podcast production.
Oh, what is the biggest sin, Kevin?
We've gone through all of them.
Well,
We've gone through 10.
I've got some more sins if you want me to.
Toby, I want to hear more sins because I said something before the break that you also reflected that the secondhand storytelling about the professionals in this podcast is lacking, is it not?
I think I flagged the same thing you did where Jared talking to a psychologist about Christy, and according to him, the psychologist says, your wife is batshit crazy. You got to run away.
Yeah.
Which I've been to therapy. I've never heard the terms batshit crazy used, nor can I imagine them coming up. But then as soon as I'm like, I can't fucking believe this shit, they have actual tape of his lawyer saying, I like to fight for the good guy, the underdog. I'm like, oh, really? That's awesome. I'm glad he found you then.
Yeah.
So I don't know. The whole thing was just like, what the hell's going on?
He's measuring for his foundation, Toby, to see if he can get a new prefab house. That's what's going on. How many times did we hear that?
I feel as though they listened to a bunch of shitty podcasts that probably did well in the charts and then tried to recreate them. And some of it was really fucking lazy shit about like good versus bad and like what a fucking charmer this guy was and just kind of putting things into as black and white terms as possible. Didn't think at all about actual, like maybe you want to pause for a breath when you're cutting like different pieces of dialogue together or whatever, or just story. It would have been so easy to just tell this fucking thing chronologically and have it be suspenseful. Like that's all you literally had to do was just start from the beginning. You can tell it through Jared's viewpoint. You can tell it through whatever. It's like, oh, she seems like my wife's pregnant. She's going to have twins. And I wish I could go in with her and stuff. And then suddenly it's like, oh, fuck, what happened? Like the kids look great, but then they died. And now she's like screaming while she's in handcuffs. And then suddenly it'd be like, oh, that's really weird. Like what the hell's going on? But instead, like Kevin said, it's like, oh, okay, well, there's not any kids. So what do you have to hold on to? It's just like you're waiting for shit that you already kind of know is going to happen to play out. But it's being kind of told in this way that any kind of interest or nuance or whatever is either lost or is put forward in such a strange way. Like the whole thing about whatever it is, like the fake, I think I have my baby thing. Like if you just tell the story chronologically, could be super interesting, but instead it just kind of comes up randomly. And then it's just the entire reason for like 20 minutes of podcast is just out the window.
Well, Laura, I just want to point out that Trisha, the host of this podcast, did have a prominent role in the Peabody Award-winning Jury Duty, right?
That was my number one TV show on my list.
Fucking incredible show. Now, granted, I don't think Trisha wrote or conceived of Jury Duty, but Trisha was in Jury Duty, right?
You said conceived.
And Jury Duty, the people who were in that show had to improvise the entire time, right? They're given a framework. It was a kind of a scary thing. And Toby, I don't know if you saw it, but the last episode, they show how they made it. And based on what he would do, like they would completely change their script and like be like, oh, fuck, he's actually really nice. Now we need to do X, right? And she's among these people. So you would think that it would not be that scary to walk into a public place and ask to speak to the communications person representing that organization. And it is framed as if she is going fucking deep throat, parking garage, investigative journalism level. Like
Mike Wallace busting into the hospital.
I'm going to have to doorstep on some people who just murdered each other. No, you're literally going to a hospital to ask a fucking question.
That was the most ridiculous fucking scene. When I was listening to that, I was driving and I actually started like swearing as I was driving. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Because first of all, it sounds like she's got like something hidden in her pocket while she's recording. And she's like, yeah, well, so we're here and it's, were you and like,
we're here in the Dunkin' Donuts line.
Yeah. Like da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, first of all, hospitals have a communications department. You can reach out to them by email or phone. There is a thing called HIPAA, which if you're an attorney, you should probably know about, which prohibits talking about patients without a release of information. It's pretty clear cut. Like also, she wasn't talking to the right people. She was talking to the security guy who wasn't even the right guy. But then I think what really frustrated me as I was listening to it more when I really started like getting wound up was then it got spun into this whole thing of like, well, we may or may not hear from someone. And well, then we got a thing and they won't talk to us. And she's like, but we told them it was favorable for the hospital because they stopped something happening. And I'm like, you did not approach that in any sort of way that was ever going to get you information. And then you spun it up to some big fucking conspiracy that didn't even exist.
Yeah.
So that part really frustrated me. I was like, what is this?
The value
nonsense?
of that was not, it was the juice wasn't worth the squeeze.
Do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the earlier seasons of like Payne Lindsay shows when he would like show his whole process, right? And he'd be like, and then I got on a plane and then this happened and this happened. But the whole thing is like, love him or hate him or feel nothing about him. Payne Lindsay will say like, I'm going to go talk to this person. He'd be like, you shouldn't go talk to that person. And then he will. And then he'll actually find something out and put it in the fucking show, right? Yeah. And you can have feelings about whether or not that's good or bad, but don't make such a big deal about doing something. If nothing came of it, you shouldn't even fucking include it. Like, that's how reporting works. And I know you're not a journalist.
We attempted to get information from the hospital and couldn't get a comment.
We don't need the scene.
But it was like almost like, didn't you feel like when you're listening to it, Rebecca, that was like, they were like, we're going to go in.
It was so cringy.
Hide our microphone and we're going to get to the bottom of this.
What stage did this even happen in? Is that even legal?
Are they trying to prove that the hospital didn't fake the fake pregnancy?
I don't know.
Just if you're going to door knock with a hidden microphone, do it at Christie's place.
There's going to be a fucking police report, right? Because the cops came. Just use the police report.
I don't know. What are you getting on the record that like is in dispute, or if you need to back up with multiple sources?
So, Kevin, question for you.
Yeah.
How is Christy doing today?
Apparently, according to the podcast, she has a baby.
Is her name even Christy?
I guess not. Because they said that the names have been changed to protect the innocent and the guilty. But I can just say one thing before we get to the reviews here, or the decisions, is that...
There's so much suspense.
Yeah, talk about suspense. There's something unsettling for me about the fact that the underlying motivator here is not a con game. It's not scamanda. It's a terrible and rare mental illness.
Well, if it's that.
If it's that. And it's because the only reason why, like, it's a mental illness one way or the other, right?
Scamander was too, I think.
But, that it's not necessarily a personality defect. This isn't a long con as what has been presented. If you're going to say that she had all the physical signs of a false pregnancy, and, like, I guess you can fake a pregnancy, but you really can't fake a false pregnancy, right? You're not going to be able to get your belly to swell up like that, unless you're wearing prosthetics, which they never kind of go into. And I'm puzzled by why you both have all the premeditation and the shady stuff that, if you're flat out traditionally faking a pregnancy, you're doing that while you also have all the physical and psychological indicators of a false pregnancy. I just kind of feel troubled for her, but also a little bit sad. It's not really satisfying to realize that at the heart of this is a tremendously ill person as opposed to an evil person, which seems to be what true crime fans of a certain taste really love.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out the podcast, The Unborn? Laura Bricker, thumbs up or thumbs down for The Unborn?
So I would say you shouldn't check out the podcast, but you should check out the podcast art, because that was my first sign that I wasn't going to like this podcast. It looked like something out of a horror movie. What am I listening to here? There were some things in this that I think are interesting. There were some medical issues that were discussed that seemed like, I'm kind of curious about that. I haven't heard about that. I'd like to hear about that. What I was troubled by with this was it was extremely repetitive. We heard the same thing over and over again. We heard one person's point of view. We heard horrible sound reenactments and Foley, which we know Kevin always likes to talk about. And at the heart of this is that the side that we don't hear from, I feel like this was really unfair. It was like a real gotcha moment, because the side we don't hear from is somebody that I think has a legitimate mental illness. So it really feels like you're beating up on this person who didn't even have an opportunity to respond or contribute to this story. So I had a lot of problems with this, but thumbs down. Just go look at the podcast art. That'll tell you all you need to know.
Toby Ball, what is your take? Thumbs up or thumbs down on the podcast, The Unborn?
Well, I'll start off by saying I'm a thumbs down. This is like kind of the answer to the question is like, what if somebody told you some like kind of weird story that they'd heard somewhere and you decided to make a podcast about it, but you didn't really spend a whole lot of time thinking about structure or writing or anything to make the story particularly suspenseful or coherent or anything else. It's just kind of spinning out this story from one point of view. there was just so many things that were just not good about this podcast, starting with, and I don't think this bothers other people as much as it bothers me, but when people cut everything so close, so like the transition between one person talking to another person talking, from a soundbite to somebody talking or whatever, like there's just no room to breathe. So it just sounds frantic the entire time, which doesn't make it any easier to listen to. And then it wasn't very well organized. You're kind of tipped off about stuff way, way earlier than you should have been in order to make the story flow. It's kind of a mess, and I don't feel bad panning it, but the people say right up front that they're not experienced podcasters or anything like that, but they like listening to true crime podcasts, and it just kind of makes you wonder, what true crime podcasts are you listening to and what lessons are you taking from them? Because it was a mess. I talk about, for good podcasts, about people making the right decisions about this or the right decisions about that. And this just felt like they made a lot of bad decisions, and at times bad decisions when making the right decision would have been 10 times easier. Like it seemed like they almost went out of their way to make things worse. So yeah, it's just not very good. I wish there had been a producer or somebody who could have just been like, let's just rethink this story a little bit and tell it in a way that's going to connect with people a little bit more. That would have been helpful, though probably not enough to get it up to a thumb sideways. Thumbs down.
Kevin Flynn.
Yeah, it's a no for me, dog. And by the way, I'll just say that if you want to call me a hypocrite, then you should look at the hardcover of my first book as far as if you want to see a Korean water ghost on fire. Yeah, what can you do? And I'll tell you that probably my screenplay probably sucks compared to the one that they'll write. But I just feel like just being a true crime podcast fan isn't credentials enough to put together a true crime podcast. There was stuff here, I think, that could have made something, but it was handled completely wrong way. They give away everything right in the beginning, so there's no suspense, and it's not really well balanced. I've really been trying to come to terms with the fact that we've been doing this for 10 years. We've done about 1,000 reviews, and there are still people that think this is what good true crime sounds like. That it has to be part horror story, it has to be full of unnecessary sound effects, heavy-handed music, farm animals getting shot, and fires blowing up.
Being sparked.
Yeah, dubious origins of 911 calls and other recreations and stuff like that. And the fact gathering is an inch deep. It's not serious work. So, as I said, it's a no for me, dog.
Yeah. I am also a thumbs down, but here's my thing. Like, something cannot be serious work and still be enjoyable to listen to or fun. Like, there have been times where I'm like, this is a bad podcast, but I'm kind of secretly enjoying listening to it, right? This was like literally the opposite. The episodes were 30-something minutes long. They felt eternal because you would hear everything that's going to happen in the first 5 minutes, and then you'd hear it again and again and again and again and again. There was repeated tape throughout the episode. But the thing that I want to say, and this is for you, Trisha, you seem like a nice person, and I was a big fan of yours in Jury Duty, but there's no reason to say, I am not a podcaster and I'm not a journalist when you're going to show it to us. Show, don't tell, right? That's what they say. And you told us and then showed us, and that was completely unnecessary. Also, saying that you're not like going to be professional is not a good setup for preparing the listener to get in the right mindset to take anything that you're about to do at face value. And speaking of face value, I believe the origin story of this podcast was that Trisha's husband went on a hunting trip and heard this story from Jared, right? On the hunting trip, or from one of Jared's friends or something. Like, Kevin comes home from things all the time and says, you're not going to fucking believe what so-and-so told me. And I am not immediately like, let's go make a podcast about that. It is not a good origin story for a podcast when it is such an uninteresting story on its face and you're going to treat it so irresponsibly. You might not be a journalist, you might not be a podcaster, but you are a media person and you know what's good. I know you do because you were in a fucking Peabody Award-winning TV show. So yeah, this is a huge thumbs down for me. I really wish we were starting our worst of 2025 list this year. I really wish we would have one. I fucking guarantee you this would be on my 10 worst podcasts of 2025 list. Kevin, if you make me listen to 9 things that are just as bad as this, it's going to be an issue. All right, yeah, big thumbs down for me for The Unborn, which also has the stupidest name of any podcast I've ever heard.
We could have a CWO, like Wall of Shame for 2025.
Oh, good idea. Just pin the art up on the wall. Oh, that's a good idea. Print it out, pin it right there.
The Wall of Shame. Like when I finished this, I was listening to it. I was driving up and back like to the North Conway area over the holiday. And I was like so happy when I finished the last episode so I could listen to music and not have to listen to this anymore.
Same girl. I'm listening to a book I hate, and I liked it better than this podcast. All right, that's going to do it for us. But before we go, Laura Bricker, do we have a cat of the week this week?
We have something very unique this week. This comes to us from Angela Buster. This was something that was happening in Angela's area. Angela was going to the shelter to get all the details because Angela needs to know this story. But she is, in the meantime, she's been hearing about this emu named Kevin that has been running around town. They finally caught Kevin. Kevin, the emu, had been on the lamb. So the story was she was going to go find out what happened. But leading into this, what we learned about Kevin the emu, it just said, City Animal Services, meet Kevin the emu. He was apprehended December 12th by Officer Wooten for jaywalking. He has been on the warrant list for quite some time. Rest assured, citizens, this dinosaur is in good hands, but we await the owner to reclaim. After January 1st, 2025, Kevin will become property of the city. So I don't know what has happened. I know that Angela did go to the Walmart where the emu was captured to get the scoop and saw a cop at Walmart and said, tell me everything. He said he was so happy it didn't go down in his shift. Kevin is apparently a menace whenever he's on the loose, but a sweetheart in a pen. He just doesn't like being chased.
Yeah, who does?
So whether or not Kevin is now property of the city or not, you might be able to adopt an emu now if you live in Texas.
I would rather adopt almost anything else besides an emu.
Since when are emus dinosaurs? When did that happen?
They have a very dinosaur-looking, like, visage, so I think that's what people say. Yeah, they look very dinosaur-y.
They've got fur on them.
They've got feathers on them, Toby, just like dinosaurs did.
He looks like what's that dinosaur with the big long neck? Brontosaurus? He kind of looks like a brontosaurus.
Yeah, they have a brontosaurus-looking thing.
Toby sees an Essie.
Yeah.
Not enough legs.
All right, Laura Bricker, if folks want to reach out to you and pitch any kind of animal story to be Cat of the Week, how can they find you online?
You can find me at Laura Bricker on Blue Sky and Instagram and send me all of your animal stuff.
That's right. You can also email us at crimewriterson@gmail.com with your animal stuff. Toby Ball, how can you be found online?
At Toby Ball NH.
What about you, Kevin?
I'm at Kevin P. Flint.
You can find me everywhere, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, etc. at Reb Lavoie. You can follow the show everywhere at Crime Writers On, but mostly I encourage you to join our incredible Facebook discussion group. Just go on Facebook, find us, hit the link to join the group. We'll let you in if you seem nice. Get episodes early and ad-free at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia. You'll get all the other stuff we make back there. Kevin says there's something like 700 episodes. It's wild. Our theme song was composed and performed by Tyler Gibbons. Our editor is the really wonderful Livy Burdett. The EP of this show is Kevin Flynn. This show is recorded in Studio C, The Closet, in our New Hampshire basement, where we also tell people we're not fat, we're just pregnant with twins. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later. You guys ready?
We're ready.
I guess.
Born ready.
Unborn ready.
Stop it.
Partners in Crime Media.